I never thought I'd end up in handcuffs because of chicken coop, but there I was, wrist chafing against cold steel, staring down the barrel of a lawsuit from the HOA queen herself, until the cops dug deeper and flipped the script on her perfect little empire. It started with a single complaint, the kind that escalates from passive-aggressive email to full-blown SWAT team, all because Karen Whitaker couldn't stand the sight of my grandpa's weathered barn disrupting her manicured view of McMansion paradise. And me? I was just the grandson trying to honor a dying man's last wish. But by the time the dust settled, I'd watched her world crumble faster than a Jenga tower built on lies. That morning, as the sun crested over the rolling hills of Willow Creek Estates in upstate New York, I slammed my pickup truck in a park and stormed toward the barn like a man possessed, toolbox in one hand and a thermos of black coffee in the other. Grandpa's will have been clear. Fix up the old structure on the edge of the property line, turn it into a community spot for kids to learn about real farming, not the fake organic bullshit sold at the local Whole Foods. But Karen, CEO Karen, with her corner office at Whitaker Financial and her Pinterest perfect life, had other plans. She'd already sent 3 certified letters, each more venomous than the last, demanding the eyesore be razed because it violated Covenant 7.2, no rural relics, in her gated utopia. I hammered the first nail into the fresh siding, the rhythmic thunk echoing like a declaration of war, when her SUV screeched up the gravel drive, kicking up dust that settled on her designer heels like fallout from a rage. She burst out, phone already glued to her ear, her double chin quivering under layers of foundation that couldn't hide the perpetual scowl etched into her face. "This is harassment," she bellowed, jabbing a manicured finger at me. "I've called the authorities. You're trespassing on association property." Trespassing? On my own damn land? The barn predated the subdivision by a century, a holdover from when this was apple orchards, not over-leveraged McMansions. By noon, the sirens wailed, and 2 Willow Creek PD cruisers pulled up, lights flashing like a bad episode of Cops. Officer Ramirez, a no-nonsense Latina with a stare that could curdle milk, stepped out first, clipboard in hand. "Sir, we got a report of unauthorized construction and potential zoning violation," she said, eyeing the half-repaired roof. Karen hovered behind her, arms crossed over her ample bosom, smirking like she'd just won the bake-off. I explained the deed, the will, the historical easement. Hell, I even pulled up the county records on my phone. But Karen interrupted, her voice a shrill symphony of entitlement. "He's lying. That barn's a hazard. Rats, rust, and God knows what else. My husband's firm insures half this development. One lawsuit and you're all bankrupt." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about aesthetics. It was personal. Karen's husband, Bradley Whitaker, the silver-tongued VP at the same firm, had been dodging me for months over a discrepancy in Grandpa's estate taxes. Whispers around town said Bradley cooked the books to shave off fees, but nothing stuck. Until now, as Ramirez radioed for backup to verify the property line, I leaned in close to Karen, my voice low and steady. "You want to play hardball? Fine. But when they start digging, it's not the barn they'll find rotting from the inside." The officers cordoned off the site, yellow tape fluttering in the breeze like caution flags on a NASCAR track. Neighbors gathered at their fences. Mrs. Patel from down the street, sipping iced tea and shaking her head. Old Mr. Jenkins, the retired vet who secretly rooted for underdogs like me. Karen paced, barking orders in her phone, demanding her lawyer, her board contacts, anyone who could bury me under paperwork. I sat on the tailgate of my truck, heart pounding not from fear, but from the cold fire of realization. This was my shot. Grandpa had raised me on stories of standing your ground, from the Revolutionary War reenactments he'd dragged me to as a kid, to the quiet dignity of tilling soil that outlasted empires. "Son," he'd say, wiping sweat from his brow under that same barn shadow. "Folks like them think money buys silence. But truth? That's the only currency that don't depreciate." Hours dragged into afternoon, the sun baking the asphalt until it shimmered like a mirage. Ramirez returned with a surveyor in tow, a lanky kid from the county office clutching a tablet and looking greener than new sod. They measured, argued over faded markers buried under ivy, while Karen live tweeted the whole thing. Show justice, protect our community, her followers lapping it up like chum in shark-infested waters. See? Even the professionals agree. It's illegal, she crowed, zooming in on the tape, as if it were Exhibit A in her personal crusade. But then the surveyor paused, frowning at his screen. Hold up, he muttered, tapping furiously. This easement, it's ironclad, dates back to 1892. The Whitaker property line actually encroaches here by 12 feet. Karen's face drained of color, her lips parting in a fish-like gasp. Encroachment? On her own land? Ramirez raised an eyebrow, glancing between us. Ma'am, you sure about that complaint? This could turn into a countersuit. I didn't gloat. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone and dialed the one contact I'd been nursing like a grudge. Detective Hale from the state AG's office. We'd met at Grandpa's funeral, where Hale had pulled me aside with a card and a quiet, "If you ever need to talk discrepancies." Now, as the surveyor confirmed the overlap, I hit send on an email attachment, scanned ledgers from Bradley's firm, anomalies I'd pieced together with a buddy who's a forensic accountant. Nothing illegal on my end, just questions. But Hale's voice crackled through the speaker. "Mr. Harlan, we've been waiting for this. Warrants are out for Whitaker Financial. Your grandpa's estate was just the tip." Karen snatched the airwaves, her voice cracking like thunder in July. "This is defamation. I'll sue you into oblivion." But the neighbors were turning now, murmurs rippling through the crowd like wind through cornstalks. Mrs. Patel called out, "Karen, remember when you fined me for my Diwali lights? This your karma." Laughter bubbled up, tentative at first, then full-throated, the kind that exposes the emperor's new clothes. As dusk painted the sky in bruised purples, Bradley's sleek Tesla whipped into view, tires squealing like a confession. He bolted from the car, tie askew, face slick with sweat despite the cooling air. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, grabbing Karen's arm. She whirled on him, eyes wild. "You told me the lines were clear. This is your mess." Their argument spilled out like garbage from an overturned bin. Accusations of forged surveys, skimmed fees, even a side hustle laundering money through the HOA slush fund. Ramirez's partner, a burly guy named Kowalski, stepped forward, radioing it in. "Dispatch, we got probable cause on site. Send the team." I watched from the shadows of the barn. The structure I'd come to save, now a silent witness to their unraveling. Grandpa's ghost felt close, his gravelly chuckle in the wind. This wasn't revenge, it was reckoning. Karen lunged at me then, her bulk heaving with fury, but Kowalski intercepted, cuffs glinting. "Ma'am, assault on an officer's watch. You're coming downtown." Her screams echoed as they loaded her in, Bradley following in a separate cruiser, his empire of spreadsheets crumbling under the weight of real numbers. By nightfall, the tape came down, and the neighbors toasted with backyard beers, stories flowing freer than the creek that bordered the property. I patched the last board by moonlight, the hammer's echo a lullaby for the wronged. But sleep didn't come easy that night. In the quiet of Grandpa's old farmhouse, I scrolled through the feeds. Karen's account suspended, hashtags flipping to Karen Karma, viral clips of her meltdown racking up millions. The comments were a bonfire of schadenfreude. Finally, a tyrant gets got. Protect the barn at all costs. Yet beneath the triumph, gnawed a hollow ache. I'd won the battle, but the war on suburbia's soul? That raged on. Little did I know, the real storm was just brewing. The next morning, as I sipped coffee on the porch, Hale called back. "Harlan, you hit pay dirt. But Whitaker's not going down alone. There's a paper trail leading straight to the mayor's office. You in for round 2? I set down the mug, staring at the barn silhouetted against the dawn. Hell yes. For Grandpa. For the truth. For every underdog who'd ever stared down a Karen and lived to tell. The days blurred into a frenzy of depositions and dawn raids. Willow Creek transforming from sleepy suburb to a tabloid battlefield. Local news vans clogged the cul-de-sacs, reporters shoving mics in faces like paparazzi at a Kardashian divorce. I became the reluctant folk hero, dubbed Barn Boy, in headlines that dance between admiration and mockery. Grandson Stan shakes HOA empire. Blair the Albany Times-Union, complete with a photo of me mid-hammer, looking more like a flannel-clad Avenger than the exhausted 32-year-old mechanic I was. Karen's arraignment was a circus. I slipped into the back row of the county courthouse, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and desperation. She waddled in, shackled and stripped of her armor. No suit, just an ill-fitting orange jumpsuit that amplified every roll and jiggle. Her lawyer, a weaselly type from a city, droned on about procedural errors, but the judge, a noble woman with silver streaks in her bun, cut him off. Ms. Whitaker, your complaint wasn't just frivolous, it was retaliatory. And these new charges? Embezzlement from association funds? That's a felony clusterfuck. The gallery erupted, gasps, whispers, a smattering of applause from the anti-HOA contingent I'd rallied via a quick Facebook group. Karen's head snapped up, eyes locking on mine across the room. Hate poured out, pure and viscous, but cracked at the edges with something new. Fear. Real, bone-deep fear. Bradley sat beside her, head bowed, his once crisp collar wilted like his alibi's. The DA laid it out in damning detail. $200,000 siphoned through fake maintenance contracts, funneled into Bradley's offshore accounts, all while Karen played enforcer, finding dissenters to cover the tracks. I testified that afternoon, voice steady as I recounted the calls, the threats, the way she'd weaponized the HOA board like her personal Gestapo. She said it had ruined me. I told the court, meeting her glare. But it was her house of cards all along. The jury, blue-collar folk from the town's outskirts, sick of gated community overreach, ate it up. By closing arguments, Karen's empire was ash. Her CEO, gig suspended pending investigation, her social circle ghosting faster than a bad Tinder match. Outside, protesters gathered, signs reading "Barnes over bullies" and "End HOA tyranny." I shook hands, posed for selfies, but inside the weight pressed. Grandpa's barn stood, sure, but at what cost? Sleepless nights replaying her venomous voicemails, the way she'd sneered at my hillbilly heritage during one particularly unhinged rant. Revenge tasted like victory wine, sweet at first sip, then turning bitter on the tongue. Weeks later, the plea deals rolled in. Bradley copped to fraud, trading 5 years for testimony against higher-ups. Karen fought it, of course, filed appeals, leaked exposés from jail that painted her as a victim of sexist small-town bias. But the internet had other ideas. Deep dives by armchair detectives uncovered more. Her history of complaints against single moms, immigrant families, anyone who didn't fit her WASP fantasy. Karen Chronicles trended, memes of her mugshot captioned with lines from The Devil Wears Prada, twisted to fit. I drove out to the barn one crisp fall evening, leaves crunching under tires like brittle bones. Kids from the neighborhood were there already, the ones I'd promised lessons on, planting heirloom seeds, building birdhouses from scrap. Their laughter cut through the chill, a balm on old wounds. But as I watched, my phone buzzed. A text from Hale. She's out on bail. Word is, she's gunning for you. Watch your back. The bitter twist? Freedom for her meant no real chains. House arrest in her McMansion, ankle monitor hidden under silk pajamas, while I scraped by on legal fees and odd jobs. The community center in the barn? Funded by GoFundMe, but bogged down in red tape from her lingering allies on the board. Victory, they called it. To me, it felt like a draw. Her world scarred. Mine forever altered. Then came the letter, slipped under my door like a serpent's whisper. Karen's handwriting, loopy and laced with spite. You think you've won? This town's rotten to the core. Enjoy your chickens while you can. Attached were photos, grainy shots of me at the barn, timestamps from weeks ago. Stalking? Or just her final flex? I burned in the farm sink, flames licking up the edges, but the smoke lingered. Grandpa's voice echoed. Truth don't always tie things neat, son. Sometimes it's just the spark that keeps the fire going. So I fanned it, called Hale, filed a report, rallied the neighbors for a watch group. Willow Creek wasn't her kingdom anymore. It was ours, flawed and fighting. Months turned to a year. the scandal fading to footnote in local lore. Karen's trial wrapped with a slap, 2 years probation, community service picking up trash along the very roads she'd patrolled in judgment. Bradley? Divorced and disbarred, slinging insurance from strip mall office. I heard she moved to Florida, chasing condos and comeuppance, but whispers said she was back, lurking in online forums, seeding doubt. One night, as snow dusted the barn roof like powdered sugar on a failed soufflé, I sat inside with a lantern's glow, ledger open to fresh pages. The kids had planted their first crop, rows of corn that would outlast us all. My phone lit up. An anonymous tip coordinates to a storage unit in her name. Hale's team raided at dawn's crack. Boxes of shredded docs. Hard drives wiped, but not clean. Enough to reopen the case. She went down quiet that time. No screams, just a hollow plea of no contest. The judge's gavel fell like final judgment, sentencing her to real time. 3 years in a low-security joint upstate, where the views were bars, not bay windows. I didn't attend. Instead, I harvested the corn with the kids, kernels bursting with promise. Bitter? Yeah, for her. For me, it was the slow thaw of spring after endless winter. Proof that even in America's fractured heartland, a barn could stand taller than a boardroom bully. Grandpa would approve. The irony hit like a rogue wave during that first community harvest festival, when the very soil Karen had tried to sterilize bloomed with abundance, and her shadow still loomed larger than the scarecrows we'd propped up in jest. I'd expanded the barn into a full-fledged AG Ed center, grants trickling in from eco-orgs tired of corporate greenwashing, but every ribbon-cutting came with a side-eye toward the Whitaker manse, now foreclosed and fenced off like a crime scene. Folks said it was haunted by her tantrums, mostly, but I knew better. Ghosts don't need mansions. They haunt the living. Life post-scandal settled into a rhythm as American as apple pie fights at town hall. Mondays mending fences, literal and figurative. Wednesdays wrangling volunteers who showed up with pitchforks and pitch decks, promising to disrupt farming like it was Silicon Valley's next unicorn. I dated a bit. A barista from the co-op with tattoos of wildflowers and a laugh that drowned out engine noise. But trust? That rusted faster than Grandpa's old Ford. Every new face carried Karen's echo. What do you really want from this place? Hale kept in touch, his updates like breadcrumbs leading deeper into the rot. The mayor's resigning, he'd say over burner phones, voice gravelly from too many stakeouts. Your tip on that storage unit? It cracked the whole thing wide. Kickbacks from developers. HOA dues padding pockets all the way to Albany. I nodded into the void, piecing it with my own sleuthing. Late nights cross-referencing public records on my laptop. The screens glow the only light in the farmhouse. Bradley had been the bagman, sure, but Karen? She was the architect, her community enhancement, emails coded missives for laundering schemes. One crisp October afternoon, as I loaded hay bales into the bed of my truck for a school field trip, a black sedan pulled up, sleek, anonymous, screaming fed. Out stepped Agent Torres, FBI badge catching the sun like a warning flare. Mr. Harlan? We need to talk about Elizabeth Whitaker. Elizabeth? That's what her high society pals called her back when she chaired galas for at-risk youth, while evicting them from affordable units. Torres slid into the passenger seat, uninvited but urgent. She's flipping, singing like a canary on plea deals, but only if we bury you deeper. Me? Deeper? I'd been the complainant, the whistleblower, the guy who'd lost weekends to depositions instead of tailgates. Turns out, in her version, I was the stalker, fabricating threats, hacking her emails, the ones I'd gotten legally through discovery. Thank you. She's got a narrative, Torres explained, flipping through a file thicker than my toolbox manual. Victim of a jilted ex-employee. Says you worked for her husband, got fired for incompetence, then went full Unabomber on the HOA. Bullshit, all of it. I never set foot in Whitaker Financial. My beef started and ended with Grandpa's estate. But narratives stick like gum on hot pavement, especially when fueled by her remaining Rolodex of influencers. By evening, my inbox overflowed. Trolls calling me a soy boy saboteur, Think pieces in the post questioning if Barn Guy was the real villain in suburbia's psychodrama. The kids at the center noticed, their chatter dying when I walked in, eyes wide with that kid logic mix of awe and pity. I drove to the old orchard that night, the one bordering her former estate, apples rotting on the ground like forgotten dreams. Kicking through the mush, I unearthed a survey stake, brass, engraved with Bradley's firm. A relic from their encroachment, probably. I pocketed it, a talisman against the tide. Back home, I fired off a response to the smears, a Substack post, raw and unfiltered, from barn to boardroom. How one woman's wine exposed a web of greed. It went viral overnight, shares spiking from rural Reddit to urban Twitter, where HOA Karen morphed into suburban scam. Karen's counterpunch landed via her lawyer's presser the next week. A tearful video from house arrest, hair teased to halo perfection, voice quivering with rehearsed vulnerability. I'm a mother, a professional, fighting for my family's safety against this. This obsession, cut to B-roll of her loving home, kids blurred but beaming, the barn looming in stock footage like a monster from a B-movie. Comment sections ignited. Poor Karen. Men just can't handle strong women. This Harlan sounds creepy AF. Creepy? I'd spent my life elbow deep in grease, fixing transmissions for single moms who couldn't afford the tow. Strong? Try surviving her deposition cross-exam, where she accused me of ogling her during board meetings I'd never attended. The backlash built, a pressure cooker of polarized pixels. Progressives decrying misogynist mob justice. Conservatives crowing about liberal witch hunts on HOAs. Me? Stuck in the crossfire, fielding death threats from her fan club. Anonymous emails promising to torch the henhouse. Torres pulled strings, got me protection. A patrol car looping my block, the kind that makes neighbors whisper. But safety's illusion shatters easy. During a late-night inventory at the barn, counting seeds for winter planting, I heard footsteps crunching deliberate on frost-kissed grass. Flashlight beam cut the dark, revealing a figure in hoodie and jeans, too slight for Karen's frame. Harlan, a woman's voice, tentative. Not her daughter, too old. It was Lisa, Bradley's paralegal, the one who tipped me off anonymously months back. She handed over a USB drive, small as a worry stone. Everything. Emails, transfers, even her therapy notes, where she brags about breaking people like you. Her eyes darted, shadows pooling in guilt hollows. I couldn't let her rewrite it. Not after what she did to my sister. Find her out of her home, for unkempt yard during chemo. We talked till moonset, her story a mosaic of coercion. Karen's mentorship that masked micromanagement, affairs hinted at in redacted files, a culture of corner-cutting that started at the top. By dawn, I'd uploaded it all to a secure server, CCNG Torres and the DA. The drop hit like a bombshell. CNN picked it up, framing it as the fall of HO, a high priestess. Karen's video views tanked, her allies scattering like roaches at lights on. But the real gut punch? Her kids. The oldest, a college freshman, went public in a campus paper. Mom's not the villain you think, but she's not the victim either. She chose this. I read it aloud to the empty farmhouse, voice cracking on the empathy. Betrayal cuts deepest for blood. Grandpa's photo watched from the mantel, his eyes twinkling with that wry wisdom. Hurt people hurt, son. But don't let it harden you. Easier said. That week, I turned down a book deal, too raw, too soon, and poured into the center instead. Hosted a Truth Until workshop, inviting folks to share their HOA horrors over cider pressings. Stories flooded in. The widow bankrupted by pool fees, the veteran cited for flagpole aesthetics. Catharsis in the collective, a chorus drowning solo spite. Winter clamped down hard, blizzards burying the barn in white drifts that muffled the world's roar. Hale visited once, snow in his boots, bearing news. She's cracking. Want to meet? Mediated, of course. I laughed, bitter as blackstrap molasses. Meet the woman who turned my grief into her game? No, but curiosity gnawed. What apology could bridge that chasm? The mediation room was a beige purgatory in a Syracuse strip mall. Fluorescent hummed the soundtrack to Uneasy Truces. Karen entered last, thinner but no less imposing, ankle monitor beeping softly like a guilty heartbeat. We sat across Formica, lawyers flanking like mismatched bookends. "I misjudged," she started, words wooden as splintered siding. "The stress, the business, it warped me." Warped? Try twisted from the root. I leaned forward, voice low. "Grandpa built that barn with his hands that fought in Korea, so folks like you could complain about chicken shit. You didn't misjudge, you maligned." Her eyes welled. Real tears? Or Oscar bait? "I lost everything," she whispered. "Husband, home, respect. Lost. Try forfeited." Torres texted midway. New warrant. Her offshore stash. Millions. I slid my phone across. "Read it." Her face crumpled, the mask slipping to reveal the hollow woman beneath. No rage, just resignation. "What now?" she asked, voice small. "Now? You own it. All of it." I stood, chair scraping like finality. Outside, snow swirled, cleansing in its chaos. Hale waited in the lot, engine idling. "You good?" he asked. "Better than good." Unburdened. Spring thawed the lies, revealing green shoots where weeds once choked. The center thrived, school partnerships, farm-to-table pop-ups drawing foodies from the city. Karen's sentence stuck. Reports said she volunteered in the prison library, reading self-help to inmates who'd stare blank. Redemption? Maybe. But trust? That's earned in the dirt, one row at a time. Yet the bitter lingered in quiet moments, an aftertaste reminding me. Victory's not the absence of pain, but the choice to plant through it. Grandpa's barn stood sentinel, walls whispering of endurance. And me? I kept hammering, building something real from the rubble. Summer scorched Willow Creek like God's own grill, turning the air thick and the tempers thicker, especially when the annual HOA election rolled around and Karen's ghost rallied from behind bars via proxy. A simpering successor named Marla, all smiles and subtle threats. I'd sworn off politics after the trial, focusing on the barn's expansion, a solar-powered greenhouse funded by crowdfund cheers from coast to coast. But Marla knocked on my door one sweltering July eve, clipboard clutched like a shield, her spray tin gleaming under the porch light. "Join the board, Harlan. We need fresh perspectives. Your story could inspire." Inspire? Or infiltrate? Whispers said Marla was Karen's hand-picked puppet, groomed in backroom brunches to restore order. I declined with coffee and a closing door, but the pressure mounted. Anonymous flyers in mailboxes decrying the barn as a magnet for vagrants. Petitions to rezone it into condos. The old guard, bruised but unbowed, fought back with barbecues and bylaw seminars, turning my center into neutral ground for neighborly negotiations. That's when the past clawed back, sharper than barbed wire. A certified envelope arrived, postmarked from the prison. Karen's scrawl on the return. Inside, a check for $50,000 drawn from her diminished accounts. Memo line reading reparations for the barn. Attached note. Use it well. I can't. No apology, just accounting, cold as a balance sheet. I stared at it, pulse thundering. Cash from the crocodile's tears? Or genuine graft? Hale advised caution. Run it through forensics. Could be a ploy. Money trail to more dirt. Turns out it was both. The funds traced clean, but unlocked a digital vault she'd forgotten to torch. Voicemails to Bradley, plotting my ruin in graphic detail. Make him beg, then break him. Audio gold for the feds, who looped it into her appeal denial. Torres called laughing. She's got an extra year now. Thanks for the gift that keeps giving. The check? I donated half to the Center Scholarship Fund, for kids like her youngest, if irony willed it, and the rest to legal aid for HOA victims. Publicly, I framed it as turning poison to purpose, but privately, it festered. Why now? Guilt's late bloom, or a bid to buy silence before her release. Sleep evaded, dreams replaying her courtroom glare, morphing into Grandpa's disappointed sigh. Festival season hit peak. The barn's parking lot jammed with trucks and tents. air humming with fiddles and friars. We'd themed it Roots and Revolt, blending hoedowns with panel talks on property rights. Academics from Cornell rubbing elbows with pitchfork populists. I emceed in jeans and a faded Eagles tee, mic hot in hand. This ain't about grudges, it's about ground. The dirt we stand on, the stories it holds. Cheers erupted, but midway through, a disturbance at the gate. Marla and a gaggle of sign wavers, chanting, "Preserve our peace." Security, volunteer vets from the center, escorted them out gentle, but not before Marla slipped me a card. Talk? Off record. Curiosity, that old devil one. We met at the diner on Route 9, vinyl booths sticky with grease, her across from me nursing a Diet Coke. "Karen's out soon," she said, stirring ice like stirring hornets. "She wants peace, but the board's fracturing. Your barn's the flashpoint. Peace. From a woman who'd weaponized wasps?" I probed. "What's her angle?" Marla leaned in, voice dropping. "Rebrand. She's pitching a reformed docuseries, From Covenants to Comeback. You as co-star, the forgiven foe." I nearly choked on my burger. Co-star? In her redemption arc? Tell her no. But if she wants real peace, start with the truth. Full restitution. Public mea culpa. Marla's eyes flickered. Ambition or alliance? She won't. Pride's her prison now. We parted uneasy, but her words seeded doubt. Was I the grudge holder, perpetuating the cycle? Grandpa's maxim rang. Forgive the trespass, but fence the field. So I fortified, installed cams around the property, rallied allies for the election. Election night crackled like 4th of July sparklers, the community hall packed with folding chairs and folding tempers. Marla's slate pushed tradition first, code for teardown and townhomes. Ours? Roots renewed, with my name reluctantly on the ballot for at-large. Ballots tallied under fluorescent flicker, tension thick as chowder. When the clerk announced Harlan by 62%, the room exploded. Hugs, hoots, a few boo hisses from the holdouts. Dawn brought backlash, slashed tires on my truck, graffiti on the barn. Karen was right. Cops dusted for prints, but it screamed inside job. Hale dispatched a tipster. Marla's emails to Karen, plotting sabotage. Busted mid-text. Marla folded, spilling on the remnants of a ring. Holdover cronies still dipping into dues. Raids followed, badges flashing in pre-dawn gloom. Karen's release date loomed like a storm front, tabloids teasing the return of HOA hell. I prepped not with pitchforks, but protocols, a welcome committee of lawyers, ready to enforce her probation terms. No contact, no canvassing. She emerged to a scrum of cameras, gaunt in sunglasses and scarf, waving weak. "Grateful for second chances," she murmured, voice amplified for the mics. No mention of me, but her eyes scanned the crowd. Hunting. First sighting. A month later, at the co-op market, her in moo-moo and humility, fingering heirloom tomatoes like they held absolution. Our carts collided, literal meat cute from hell. "Harlan," she said, "no venom, just void." The barn. "It looks good." I nodded curt, gripping the handle till knuckles whitened. "Kids did it. Not me." Pause, heavy. "I read about the check." "Thanks. But money don't mend fences." She nodded slow. "I know. Therapy's teaching me that." Therapy? The same sessions where she'd journal joys of crushing complainers. Skepticism soured my gut. "Prove it, then. Testify against the holdouts." Her face tightened. Old reflexes. "That's not. I can't. Can't or won't." We parted with carts scraping, the encounter a burr under saddle. Fall painted the hills fiery, harvest yielding bumper crops that fed the center's soup kitchen through winter. But peace? Elusive as a straight arrow in wind. Karen resurfaced in odd spots, commenting on town Facebook posts with constructive feedback, her tone laced with that old superiority. Neighbors bristled, old wounds reopening like poorly stitched gashes. Then the call, "Torres, urgent." She's petitioning for early release, citing rehabilitation via your forgiveness. My what? I'd given none. Turns out, she'd spun our market chat into a narrative of mutual healing. Affidavits from Marla swearing-eyed encouraged reconciliation. Lies layered thick. Court dates set. I testified again. Voice steel. Contact was incidental. No absolution granted. Judge denied. But the damage? A media circus reignited, pitting Karen's comeback against Barn Boy's bitterness. Talk shows booked me. Is forgiveness overrated? While her camp leaked, therapy breakthroughs. Exhaustion crept, a thief in the night, stealing sleep and sparking doubts. Was I the villain now, unyielding in my grudge? Grandpa's journal, unearthed during an attic purge, steadied me. Yellowed pages of 1950s entries, railing against union busters who cheated his farm co-op. Bitter don't mean blind, boy. See the board, play the long game. Long game. I pivoted, launching a podcast from the barn, unfenced, stories from the suburbs, interviews with the fined upon, humanizing the headlines. Episodes on Karen? Not yet. Timing's art. Her next move, a letter to the editor, published in the local rag. Lessons from lockup. Why we need compassion over cancellation. Subtle dig, positioning her as sage, me as savage. Responses flooded, a deluge of support that drowned her out. But the personal toll mounted, dates ghosting after drama checks, investors hesitating on center grants. Winter solstice brought clarity, bonfire at the barn drawing 200, folks sharing stories, round the flames, sparks rising like liberated truths. A face in the crowd. Lisa, Bradley's ex-paralegal, bundled in wool. Heard she's writing a book, she said, passing marshmallows. You the villain, naturally. I skewered one, fire kissing crisp. Let her. Ink fades, soil endures. But the bitter core? Realize then, staring into embers. Revenge's arc bends toward isolation if unchecked. Grandpa hadn't hated his foes. He'd outlived them, roots delving deep. So I reached out, not to her but within. Therapy of my own, unpacking the betrayal's bruise, learning to loose the grudge without losing the guard. Spring rains washed clean, greening the fields for new plantings. Karen's book deal fizzled. Ghostwriter bailed on ethical grounds, leaving her to self-pub screeds that sold to diehards only. The center certified organic, kids graduating with AG degrees, their futures plowed for my pain. Yet in quiet dusks, hammering final nails on an apiary extension, I'd wonder, does she stare at her walls, regretting the calls? Or plot the next complaint? Bitter endings aren't tidy, they're tendrils, weaving through lives long after the gavel falls. For her, the cage of consequence. For me, the freedom of fertile ground, proof that from one woman's fall, a community's rise. The cycle spun on through another relentless summer, heat waves warping the horizon like bad memories, and Willow Creek's underbelly bubbling up anew when Karen's reformed facade cracked under the weight of her own ambition. I'd hardened into the role of steward, the barn now a beacon for regional co-ops, its walls echoing with workshops on everything from permaculture to protest, how to grow food and fight for it. But success invites serpents. Whispers reached me of her circling, not from bars but boardrooms, pitching consulting to desperate HOAs on crisis aversion. Hale retired that June, passing the torch with a steak dinner at the local grill, his napkin scribble. Watch the X's, they breed trouble. Prophetic. Bradley resurfaced, slimmer and slicker, running a compliance firm from a home office in Scranton. He emailed cold. Water under the bridge? Coffee. Bridge? The one he'd burned with Grandpa's savings? I declined, but curiosity clicked reply, why now? His response, leverage. She's dragging me back in, threatening to spill more if I don't fund her comeback fund. Leverage. The word soured like curdled cream. We met neutral at a rest stop off I-81, diesel fumes mingling with diner coffee. Bradley looked hollowed, eyes darting like a man who'd traded souls for spreadsheets. She's unhinged, he confessed, voice low. Want to sue the feds for trauma, name you co-defendant. Enabler of harassment. Enabler? Of her own hubris? He slid a folder across the Formica. Printouts of her filings, drafts wild with accusations, Me planting evidence, bribing witnesses, even romancing the judge, a 60-year-old widow with zero interest. I laughed sharp. And you're the white knight? He winced. Nah, just surviving. Take it to Torres, maybe a deal for me. Deal? The man who'd laundered lives for luxury? But the folder burned in my glove box, fuel for the fire. Torres, now lead on white collar, pounced. This ties her to 3 more associations. Nationwide scam. Raid spanned states, badges in Buffalo to Boise, unearthing a network of Karen clones, enforcing her blueprint. Media frenzy reignited, but flipped. Serial suburban shakedown, Whitaker's web exposed. Karen's mug resurfaced, this time with a most wanted vibe. Her probation revoked mid-meltdown. She bolted, fled to a cousin's in Florida, Airbnb'd under alias, but tipped by Bradley's wire. Feds nabbed her at a Panera, mid-latte, screaming entrapment as cuffs clicked. The trial was spectacle supreme. Federal courthouse in Albany, a zoo of suits and spectators. I watched remote, stream buffering on the barn's Wi-Fi, kids oblivious in the garden. Prosecutors paraded the evidence. Her emails orchestrating fines for favors, voice memos mocking little people like me. This defendant didn't just break laws. The lead intoned. She built an empire on broken backs. Her defense? Duress from divorce stress. Laughter rippled the feed. Testimony day, I took the stand virtual, scream my shield. She saw a barn, a symbol of what she couldn't control, and swung. Jurors nodded, faces etched with recognition. Karen's glare pierced pixels, but fractured, defiance diluted by despair. Verdict, guilty on all counts, 8 years stacked like indictments, no parole whispers. Outside the storm, Willow Creek exhaled. The board dissolved the HOA, reforming as a voluntary co-op. Dues optional, disputes democratic. Neighbors threw a free at last, luau at the barn. Tiki torches flickering forgiveness. I danced awkward with the barista, now girlfriend, her wildflower ink glowing in firelight. You okay? She asked head on shoulder. Healing, I murmured. Truth. But bitter's brew simmers slow. Fall brought her appeal. Pro-SE ramblings mailed to the center. Pages of paranoia, blaming Harlan's hex. I filed them away, unread, for the archive. A cautionary collection for future stewards. Winter whispered closure when the feds auctioned her assets. McMansion sold to a family of Filipina farmers, turning lawn to loquat groves. Spring 2026 dawn verdict. The barn's 10th anniversary bash drawing hundreds. Speeches from senators on property rights reform. Bills named after Grandpa pending in Congress. I keynote last, voice steady. This place isn't mine, it's ours. Built on backlash, bloomed in bitterness, but rooted in resilience. Applause thundered, but my eyes sought the horizon, where her old drive met the creek. Word came via Torres's retirement card. She's adapting, library clerk, writing letters to kids about choices. Choices. The ones she'd made, daily, to claw over connect. No contact, but I imagined her pen pausing, inkwell dry on regret. Years folded like bellows, the center of campus now, grads greening cities coast to coast. I married the barista in the orchard, vows under apple boughs heavy with fruit. Kids came, too, dirt-streaked and dreaming. Learning hammer from hammer, truth from trial. One eve, as cicadas chorused, I found an envelope in the mailbox. No stamp, local post. Inside, a sketch, and signed, crude lines of a barn, blooming defiant. No note, but the paper smelled faintly of prison-issue soap. Karen? Or wishful wind? I framed it in the office beside Grandpa's photo. Bitter ending? For her, bars and echoes. For me, the sweet tang of soil turned, life looping from loss to legacy. In America's sprawl, where covenants clash and comeuppance calls, the barn endures, a monument to the wronged, whispering, stand, plant, prevail. And in the quiet after, as stars pricked the velvet sky, I heard Grandpa chuckle. That's the story, son. Not the fall, but the rise.